Part 2, Chapter 3 of Crime and Punishment. Not that he was completely unconscious during the whole period of his illness. It was rather a state of fever with delirium and semi-wakefulness. He remembered much of it afterwards. Now it seemed to him that a large number of people had gathered round him with the intention of seizing him and carrying him off somewhere, arguing and quarreling fiercely over him. Now he was suddenly alone in the room. Everyone had gone away in fear of him, and only now and then would they open the door ever so slightly in order to look at him. They would threaten him, make arrangements about something between themselves, laugh at him and tease him. He remembered Nastasia being frequently beside him. He could also discern another person whom he thought seemed very familiar, but who this was he could not for the life of him determine. And this made him miserable, so that he even cried. Sometimes he would fancy that he had been lying there for a month. At other times that it was still the same day. As far as that was concerned, however, that he had forgotten about altogether. Though every minute or so he would remember that he had forgotten about something, it was out of the question for him to forget about. And as it came back to him, he would be racked with torment and anguish, groaning as he sank into rabid fury or fearful, unbearable terror. Then he would endeavor to get up, to flee, but someone always stopped him by force, and he would fall back helpless, unconscious. At last he came back to himself completely. This happened in the morning at 10 o'clock. At that hour, on clear days, the sun sent a long band of light over the right-hand wall of his room, illuminating the corner beside the door. By his bed stood Nastasia and another person who was examining him very curiously and was totally unfamiliar to him. This was a young lad in a kaftan with a beard who was probably a money messenger by the look of him. Through the half-open door peeped the landlady. Raskolnikov raised himself on one elbow. "Who's this, Nastasia?" he asked, pointing to the lad. "Would you look at him? Why, he's woken up," she said. "So the gentleman has," the money messenger replied. Realizing this was so, the landlady seized her observation through the doorway, closed the door, and disappeared from view. She was invariably shy and found conversations and arguments irksome. She was about 40 and was plump and oily, black-eyebrowed and black-haired, with the good nature that goes along with plumpness and laziness. Actually, she was quite a comely girl, or a comely woman. C-O-M-E-L-Y, woman, more bashful than she needed to be. "You, who are you?" he went on, continuing his inquiry and addressing the money messenger himself. But at that moment the door again opened wide, and, stooping slightly because of his height, Razumikin came in. "It's a regular ship's cabin," he exclaimed as he entered. "I always bang my head, and they call these lodgings. So you've woken up, have you, brother? I heard it just now from Pashenka." "He only woke up a second ago," said Nastasia. "That's right, only a second ago," the money messenger echoed with a smile. "And who might you be, sir?" Razumikin asked, suddenly turning to him. "I'd like to make it clear to you that my name's Razumikin, not Razumikin as everyone calls me, but Vrazumikin, a student and gentleman's son, and he's my chum." "Well, sir, and who are you?" "I'm the money messenger in our office. I've been sent from the merchant Shilopayev, sir, and I'm here on business." "Will you be so good as to sit down on this chair, please?" Razumikin sat down on another at the opposite side of the table. "It's just as well you've woken up, brother," he went on, addressing Raskolnikov. "You've hardly had a bite to eat or a drop to drink for 4 days. Really, we've been giving you tea in spoonfuls. Twice I brought Zosimov to see you. Do you remember Zosimov? He examined you carefully and immediately said it was all a lot of nonsense. You had some kind of stroke in your head or something. Some nervous rubbish, poor diet, he said, not enough beer and horseradish. That was why you got ill. But it was nothing. It would pass. Good old Zosimov. He set about tending to you nobly. Well, sir, I mustn't keep you any longer," he said, turning to the money messenger again. "Please be so good as to tell us what you want. I may as well let you know, Radia, that this is the second time someone's come from that office of theirs. Only last time it wasn't this fellow, but another, and he and I had a bit of talking to." "Who was that fellow who came here before you?" "I think that sounds as though it must have been the day before yesterday, sir. It must have been Alexei Semyonovitch. He works in our office too, sir." Would you say he was a bit more intelligent than you? What's your opinion? Yes, sir. He's sort of a bit more solid, sir. Spot on. Well, sir, continue. Well, you see, sir, there's a money order come to our office for you through Afanasy Ivanovich Vakrushin, of whom you've heard a few times before. I believe at the request of your mother, sir, the money messenger went on, addressing Raskolnikov directly. In the event of your being in possession of your faculties, sir, I'm to entrust 35 rubles to you, sir, as Semyon Semyonovich has received instructions to that effect from Afanasy Ivanovich in the same manner as on the previous occasion at your mother's request. Would you be knowing Afanasy Ivanovich, sir? Yes, I remember someone called Vakrushin, Raskolnikov said meditatively. Do you hear that? He knows the merchant Vakrushin, Razumikin exclaimed. How could he possibly not be in possession of his faculties? As a matter of fact, I'm beginning to notice now that you're an intelligent chap too. I say, sir, it's nice to do business with a man who can talk with some wit. It's the same Vakrushin, sir, Afanasy Ivanovich Vakrushin. And at the request of your mother, who has already sent some money through him in the same manner, he's agreed to do it again on this occasion, sir, and a day or two ago sent instructions from it. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm getting sick. Who has already sent some money through him in the same manner. He's agreed to do it again on this occasion, sir, and a day or two ago sent instructions from his domicile that you were to be paid 35 rubles in expectation of better days to come, sir. Better days to come. That's your best crack yet. Though the one about your mother wasn't bad either. Well, tell me in your opinion, is he or isn't he in full possession of his faculties, eh? It's all right with me, sir. Only he ought to sign for it, sir. He'll scratch his name, never fear. What's the form? Do you have a book or something? Yes, sir. Here it is, sir. Give it here. Now, Radya, sit up. I'll support you. Just scribble Raskolnikov for him. Take the pen, brother, for money is sweeter than sugar to us right now. I don't want it, Raskolnikov said, pushing the pen away. What on earth are you talking about? I won't sign. The devil, man, but you've got to. I don't want the money. So it's, I don't want the money, is it? Well, brother, you're singing the wrong tune here. I have my ears as a witness. Please don't worry. He's off on his travels again. It happens to him even when he's wide awake. You're a sensible chap, and we'll provide him with a bit of guidance. That's to say, we'll simply guide his hand and he'll sign. Well, let's get on with it. Oh, I think perhaps I'll look in some other time. No, there's no reason for you to put yourself out. You're a sensible chap. Now, Radya, don't delay our visitor any longer. He's waiting, you see. And he earnestly prepared to guide Raskolnikov's hand. Leave me, I'll do it myself, Raskolnikov said, took the pen and signed his name in the book. The money messenger laid out the cash and beat a retreat. Bravo. Now, brother, are you hungry? Yes, Raskolnikov replied. Have you any soup? There's some of yesterday's left, Nastasia, who had been standing there all this time, replied. Rice, flour, and potato? That's right. I know it off by heart. Bring on your soup, and let us have some tea while you're about it. All right, then. Raskolnikov was looking at everything with deep amazement and a vacant, senseless terror. He decided to say nothing and wait for what might happen next. I don't appear to be delirious, he thought. This must all be real. 2 minutes later, Nastasia returned with the soup and announced that the tea will be along in a moment. To accompany the soup, 2 spoons and 2 plates put in an appearance together with the complete dinner set, a salt cellar, a pepper pot, mustard for the beef, and so on, the like of which had not been seen for a long time. There was even a clean tablecloth. They want some money. It might not be a bad idea, Nastasia Yushka, if Praskovia Pavlovna were to send us a couple of bottles of beer. We could do with a drop of something. Quick on your toes, aren't you, Nastasia muttered and went off to fulfill his command. Raskolnikov continued to stare at everything wildly and with strained attention. In the meantime, Razumikin moved over and sat beside him on the sofa, and with the clumsiness of a bear placed his left arm around his head, even though Raskolnikov could quite easily have raised himself, and with his right hand brought a spoonful of soup to his mouth, first having blown on it as a precaution so that he should not burn his tongue. The soup, however, was only barely warm. Raskolnikov greedily gulped down 1 spoonful, then another, then yet another. But then, having given him a few spoonfuls, Razumikin suddenly stopped and announced that before letting him have any more, he would have to consult Zazimov. Nastasia came in with 2 bottles of beer. What about the tea? Do you want it? Yes. Run and get the tea, Nastasia. There's a good girl. I think we may safely indulge in a tea without consulting the medical faculty. But now we have beer too. He moved back to his own chair, drew the soup and beef towards him, and began to eat with such appetite that one might have thought he had had nothing to eat for 3 days. You know, Brother Radia, I eat like this at your place every day now, he muttered as clearly as he was able with his mouth stuffed full of beef. That's a wonderful landlady of yours. Pashenka sees to everything. She makes these feasts in my honor and really puts her heart into them, of course. It's not on my insistence, but then I don't exactly protest either. And now here's Nastasia with the tea. Quick, wasn't she? Nastenka, would you like some beer? Oh, you and your mischief. Some tea then? Yes, I'd quite like some. Go on then, pour it out. Wait, I'll do it. Sit down at the table. He at once took over from her. Poured 1 cup, then another, abandoned his lunch, and sat down on the sofa again. As before, he put his left arm around the patient's head, lifted him up, and began to spoon tea into him with the teaspoon, again blowing on it constantly with a special zeal, as though this process of sufflation contained within it the element that was central and crucial to Raskolnikov's recovery. Raskolnikov said nothing and offered no resistance, in spite of the fact that he felt he had quite enough strength to raise himself and sit on the sofa without anybody's help. Not only did he feel he could keep sufficient control of his hands in order to hold a spoon or a cup, he could even, he felt, have walked, but the workings of some strange, almost animal cunning suddenly prompted him to conceal his strength until the right moment, to lie low, pretend to be not yet quite conscious if need be, while all the while listening and pricking up his ears to find out what was going on. He was, however, unable to master his revulsion. Having gulped down about a dozen spoonfuls of tea, he suddenly jerked his head free, pushed the teaspoon away fretfully, and collapsed once again on the pillows. There were actually proper pillows under his head now, feather ones with clean slips. This, too, he observed and took into account. We must get Pashenka to send us up some raspberry jam today so we can make him a drink, said Razumikin, sitting down on his own chair and once again resuming work on the soup and the beer. And where's she going to get raspberries? Nastasia asked, holding her saucer on 5 splayed fingers and sucking her teeth through the sugar, peasant fashion. She can buy them at the corner shop, my dear. You see, Radia, a whole mass of events is taking place while you've been away on your travels. When you ran away from me in that knavish way of yours, without even telling me where your lodgings were, I was suddenly seized by such a temper that I decided to track you down and punish you. I set to work that very same day. Oh, I walked and walked, asked questions here, asked questions there. I'd forgotten about this place where you are now, actually. It never occurred to me because I didn't know you were here. Well, and as far as your old lodgings, all I can remember was that they were at 5 corners in Karlamov's tenements. I searched and searched for those Karlamov tenements, and then, of course, it turned out that it wasn't the Karlamov tenements at all, but the Butch ones. You know the way one gets the names of things mixed up. Well, then I began to lose my temper. I lost my temper, and the next day I thought, here goes. And I went to the address bureau, and would you believe it? Within 2 minutes, they found you for me. You're on their books. On their books? Of course. Yet while I was there was someone looking for a General Kobelev, and they couldn't find him to save themselves. Well, old chap, it's rather a long story, but as soon as I popped up here, I immediately got acquainted with all your doings. All of them, brother, all of them. I know about the lot. I made the acquaintance of Nikodem Fomich, and Ila Petrovich pointed out to me. Met the yard keeper, Mr. Zamyotov. Met Alexander Grigorievich. Met the clerk at the local police bureau, and finally met Pashenka. That crowned everything. And now she knows, too. He sugared her up, Nastasia murmured, smiling a mischievous, ironic smile. And you ought to put yours down in the cup where it belongs, Nastasia Nikiforovna. Oh, you rotten pig, Nastasia exclaimed suddenly, and burst out laughing. Anyway, here, my name is Petrova, not Nikiforovna, she added suddenly. When she had stopped. I shall take it to heart, madame. Well now, brother, to cut a long story short, at first I wanted to wire the whole place up with electric current in order to get rid of all the prejudices there are around here in one go. But Pashenka won the day, you know, brother. I had no idea she was such a dish, eh? What do you think? Raskolnikov said nothing, though never for one moment had he taken his troubled gaze off his friend and was now continuing to stare intently at him. And you might even say, Razumikin went on, not in the slightest put out by the silence, and as if in confirmation of some reply he had received, you might even say that she's got all that it takes, and in all the right places too. You dirty beast, Nastasia screamed again, plainly finding this conversation a source of the most unutterable delight. You see, brother, what you did wrong was not to get stuck in there right at the beginning. She needed to be handled in a different sort of way. I mean, she really is a most surprising character. While more about her character later, only how could you have let things get to such a pass that she didn't even dare to send your dinner up to you? And then that promissory note, how you taking leave of your senses to go signing a thing like that? And then what about this business of you promising to marry her daughter when Natalia Yegorovna was still alive, that is? I know everything, however, I can see that I've touched a delicate chord and that I'm an ass. You must forgive me. But while we're on the subject of stupidity, what do you think? I mean, Praskovya Pavlovna is not at all as stupid as one might suppose at first glance, is she, eh? No, Raskolnikov said through his teeth, looking to one side but realizing that it would be more to his advantage to pursue the conversation. Don't you think so? Razumikin exclaimed, evidently delighted to have received a reply. But then she's not exactly clever either, is she, eh? A truly, truly surprising character, you know, brother. I'm sometimes at my wit's end. To tell you the truth, she must be all of 40. She says she's 36, and she has every right to do so. Actually, to be quite honest, I approach her more on an intellectual level, a purely metaphysical one. We've got a sort of secret code between us that's worse than algebra. I don't understand any of it, but that's all a lot of nonsense. The thing is that when she saw you'd stopped being a student, that you lost your private teaching and your decent suit of clothes, and that after her daughter's death, there was no reason for her to treat you as one of her family anymore, she suddenly got frightened. And since you were hiding yourself away in your room and had dropped your previous friendly relations with her, she decided to kick you out. She'd been cherishing that plan for a long time, but was loath to say goodbye to the promissory note. What was more, you'd been telling her that your mother would pay it. I was a bastard to say that. My mother's practically begging on the streets. I lied to her so she'd let me stay in my lodgings and provide me with meals, Raskolnikov said loudly and distinctly. Yes, and that was a wise thing to do. Only the trouble was that who should turn up just then but Mr. Chebarov, court councilor and man of legal business. If he hadn't been there, Pashenka would never have thought of any of it. She's far too shy. Well, men of business aren't shy, and of course the first thing he asked her was, question, was there any hope of payment on the promissory note? Answer, yes, because there was a mother who actually sent her Radenka money out of her 125 ruble pension, even though it meant she would have to go without food, and a sister who would sell herself into bondage for her brother's sake. It was on this that he based his course of action. What are you moving about like that for? I know all your precious secrets now. It wasn't in vain that you indulged in those confidences with Pashenka when you were still part of her family, and here I speak as a friend. But that's how it is. A man of honesty and sensitivity indulges in confidences, while a man of business listens, but goes on licking up the cream. So the next day she did was to give the said promissory note to the said Chebarov in lieu of payment. And he had no qualms about formally demanding the amortization of the debt. When I found out about all this, I felt like giving him a dose of electric current too to clean out his conscience. But at that time, Pashenka and I were getting along swimmingly, and I told her to stop the whole thing right at the source, as it were, vouching to see to it that you paid up. I vouch for you, brother. Do you hear that? We summoned Chebarov, stuck 10 rubles under his nose, and got the document back. I now have the honor of presenting it to you. They'll believe what you tell them now. Here, take it. I've even torn it slightly in the way one is supposed to. Razumikin spread the acknowledgement of debt out on the table. Raskolnikov glanced at it, and without saying a word, turned his face to the wall. Razumikin fairly winced. I can see, brother, he said after a while, that I've made a fool of myself again. I thought I'd cheer you up and take your mind off things with a bit of chatter, but I think I've merely annoyed you. Were you the person I didn't recognize when I was delirious? Raskolnikov asked, having also remained silent for a while without turning his head around. That's right. And a fair old frenzy you got into about it, too, especially when I brought Zamyotov with me one day. Zamyotov, the police clerk? Why? Raskolnikov quickly turned around and stared at Razumikin. What the devil? Why are you upset? He wanted to make your acquaintance. It was his idea because he and I had been talking so much about you. How would I know so much about you unless I'd been talking to him? He's a splendid fellow, brother, a most wonderful chap in his own way. Naturally, we're buddies now. We see each other practically every day. I mean, I've even moved into this bit of town now. Didn't you know? I've only just moved. He and I have been to Lavisa's place a couple of times. Do you remember Lavisa Ivanovna? Did I rave a lot? You bet. You weren't your own man. What did I rave about? Heavens, man. What did you rave about? People rave about all sorts of things. Wow, brother, we mustn't waste time. There's business to see to. He rose from his chair and grabbed hold of his cap. What did I rave about? Oh, how you keep on. It is some secret you're afraid of having given away? Don't worry, you said nothing about any countesses, but you said a great deal about a bulldog, some earrings, and a chain or other. Kritovsky Island, some yard-keeper fellow, and Nikodem Fomitch and Isla Petrovich, his assistant. Oh, yes, and you were particularly interested in one of your own socks. He kept moaning, give it to me, over and over again. Samyodov himself went looking around for your socks, and with his very own hands bathed in scent and bedizened with rings, pulled the whole rubbishy lot into your grasp. Only then put the whole rubbish. Okay, what do you say? Samyotov himself went looking around for your socks, and with his very own hands bathed in scent and bedizened with rings, put the whole rubbishy lot into your grasp. Only then did you calm down. You held on to that rubbish for days on end. It was impossible to get it away from you. It must be somewhere under your quilt even now. And then you asked for the ends of your trousers, and my, how tearful you were about it. We tried to find out what sort of ends they were, but we couldn't make it out. It was a mystery. Well, now I really must be off. Look, here are your 35 rubles. I'll take 10 of them, and in a couple hours' time, I'll be back here and show you what use I've made of them. At the same time, I'll let Zazimov know how you are. Though he really ought to have been here long ago. It's getting on 12 o'clock. And Nastenka, while I'm gone, please look in often and find out if he wants anything to drink or whatever. As for Pashenka, I'll tell her what she needs to know right now. Goodbye. Calling her Pashenka like that isn't to old crafty lips, Nastasia said as he went out. Then she opened the door and began to eavesdrop, but lost patience and ran downstairs. She was extremely interested to know what Razumikin was talking about down there with the landlady. Indeed, it was in general obvious that she was quite taken with him. No sooner had the door closed behind her than the patient threw off his quilt and leaped up from the bed like a man half crazy. With burning, convulsive impatience, he waited for them to go so he could begin his task. But what was it? What was the task? Now, as though by design, it seemed to have gone clean out of his head. Oh, Lord, just tell me one thing. Do they know about it all? Or haven't they found out yet? Or is it that they've simply been pretending, playing cat and mouse with me while I was still laid up in bed, and will suddenly come in and tell me that they've long known everything and have merely been? Then what am I to do now? I've gone and forgotten. That would have to happen. I've gone and forgotten. That would have to happen. 1 minute it was in my head, and the next went out of it. Tastes delicious, man. He stood in the center of the room and looked around him in agonized bewilderment. He went over to the door, opened and listened, but that was not it. Suddenly, as though it had come back to him, he rushed to the corner where the hole in the wallpaper was, began to examine everything. Put his hand through the hole, felt about, but that was not it either. He went to the stove, opened it, and began to feel around in the ashes. The fragments of his trouser ends and the shreds of his torn-out pocket lining were scattered about where he had thrown them earlier. That meant that no one had seen them. At that point, he remembered the sock that Razumikin had told him about just then. True enough, there it was lying on the sofa under the quilt. But it was now so dirty and unnoticeable that Zamyotov could not possibly have spotted it. That's it, Zamyotov, the bureau. But why do they want me at the bureau? Where's that summons? Wait a minute, I'm getting mixed up. That was back then, and back then I examined my sock too, but now I've been ill. But why did Zamyotov come to see me? Why did Razumikin bring him here? He muttered helplessly, sitting down on the sofa again. What is all this? Is it still my delirium playing up, or is it real? It seems to be real. Yes, I remember. I must flee. I must take to my heels right now. I have absolutely no choice, but where am I to run to? And where are my clothes? My boots aren't here. They've cleared them away, hidden them. It's all too clear. But here's my coat. They must have missed it. Here's my money on the table. Thank God. Here's the note, too. I'll take the money and leave it all. Rent new lodgings, they'll never find me. Yes, but what about the address bureau? They'll find me. Razumikin will. I'd better flee entirely, go far away to America and let them go to hang. I'll take the note too, it'll come in handy over there. What else should I take? They think I'm ill. They don't even know I can walk. Ha ha ha. All I need to do is get down to the bottom of those stairs. But what if they've put people on watch down there? Policemen. What's this, tea? Ah, there's some beer left too. Half a bottle. And it's cold. He seized hold of the bottle in which there was enough beer left to fill the whole tumbler and drank it down with pleasure in one draught, as though he were extinguishing a fire within himself. But hardly had a moment gone by then the beer went to his head, and along his spine passed a gentle and even welcome shiver. He lay down and pulled the quilt over him. His thoughts, which were already morbid and incoherent as it was, began increasingly to merge with one another. And before long slumber, light and welcome, held him in its grasp. With pleasure he sought a place for his head on the pillow, wrapped himself more tightly in the sofa quilt, which now lay on top of him in place of the tattered overcoat he had been used to before, uttered a quiet sigh, and fell into a deep, sound, restorative sleep. What woke him was the sound of someone coming up to his room, opening his eyes. He saw Razumikin, who had opened the door wide and was standing in the threshold, wondering whether to go in or not. Raskolnikov quickly sat up on the sofa and looked at him as though making an effort to remember something. Ah, you're awake. Well, here I am, Nastasia. Bring the bundle up here. Razumikin shouted down the staircase. In a second or two, I'll show you how I spent the money. What time is it? Asked Raskolnikov, looking around uneasily. Why, you slept in grand style, brother. It's evening outside. It must be about 6 o'clock. You've been asleep for about 6 hours and a bit. Good Lord, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? It'll have done you good. Meaning the sleep. Where's the hurry? Off to a rendezvous or something? Now all our time's our own. I've already been waiting for you for about 3 hours. I looked in a couple times, but you were asleep. I went to call on Zazimov twice. Nothing doing. He wasn't in. But don't worry, he'll be along. I also took a bit of time off to see my own paltry affairs. You see, I moved today. Moved completely together with my uncle. I've got an uncle living with me now, you see. But to hell with that. To our task. Give me the bundle over here, Nastenka. Now, we'll just, how are you feeling, brother? I'm all right. I'm not ill, Razumikin. Have you been here long? I told you I've been waiting for 3 hours. No, but before that, what do you mean before? How long is it since you began these visits to the house? But, I told you all this morning, or have you forgotten? Raskolnikov began to reflect. The events of that morning flitted before him as in a dream. He was unable to recall them single-handed and looked questioningly at Razumikin. Razumikin said, you have forgotten. Why? Even just this morning I thought you weren't yet now your sleep has made you recover. You really do look a lot better. Good for you, lad. But now to business. You'll remember it all in a jiffy. Look what I have here, my dear fellow. He began to undo the bundle on which he had obviously lavished a good deal of care. Believe me, brother, this is something that lies particularly close to my heart, for we must make a proper human being of you. Let's get on with it. We'll start at the top. Do you see this little casket? He began producing from the bundle a fairly decent, but at the same time very ordinary and cheap quality peaked cap. Would you like to try it on? Later, afterwards, Raskolnikov said, brushing it aside peevishly. No, brother Radia, don't be quarrelsome. Afterwards, it'll be too late. Besides, I shan't be able to get a wink of sleep all night because I don't know your size. I bought it on a guess. Perfect, he exclaimed triumphantly, having tried it on Raskolnikov's head. It fits perfectly. What a man wears on his head, brother, is the most important item of his costume. It's a kind of introduction in a way. Every time my friend Tostyakov goes into one of those public places, he sees that all the other gents standing there are wearing caps and hats, and he finds himself compelled to remove his own humble lid. Everyone thinks he does it because he has servile feelings, but it's really because he's ashamed of that bird's nest of his. He's a man with a sense of shame. Well, now, Miss Nastenka, here are 2 items of headdress for you. This grand old Palmerston he produced from the corner Raskolnikov's mangled round hat, which for some unknown reason he had given the name Palmerston, or this intricate little knick-knack. What's your guess, Radia? How much do you think I paid for it? How about you, Nastayushka? He said, turning to her, observing that Raskolnikov was not going to say anything. I should think it cost you 20 kopecks, Nastasia replied. 20 kopecks, you brainless girl, he exclaimed, taking offense. Why, one couldn't even buy you for 20 kopecks these days. It costs 80. That was only because it's been worn, but then it carries a guarantee. If you wear it out this year, they'll give you another next year for nothing, so they will. Now let us proceed to the United American States, as they used to be called in the gymnasium I attended. I must warn you that I'm rather proud of the breeches and in front of Raskolnikov he stretched out a pair of gray trousers made of a light summer woolen material. They bear not a hole nor a stain, and they're not bad at all, even though they are a bit worn. And there's a waistcoat to go with them, the same color as fashion requires. Actually, the fact that the stuff's been worn is a positive advantage. It's softer, more comfortable, you see. Radia, it's my opinion that in order for man to make his way in the world, it's sufficient for him always to observe the seasons. If one doesn't demand asparagus in January, what? Excuse me. If one doesn't demand asparagus in January, one may keep a few rubles in one's purse, and the same thing applies to the purchase before you now. At present, it is summer. So I have made a summer purchase because for autumn you'll need things made of warmer material and you'll have to throw these ones away. All the more so since by that time this stuff will have fallen to bits. It's not because of its increased splendor than because of certain inner defects. Well, give me your guess. How much do you suppose? 2 rubles and 25 kopecks. And remember, again, there's the same guarantee. If you wear these out this year, you may take some others next year for nothing. Those are the only terms of trade at Fedyayev's shop. You pay your money once and you get goods to last all your life, because otherwise you never go near the place again. Well, now let's proceed to the boots. What do you think? I mean, it's easy to see they've been worn, yet they'll answer perfectly for a month or two, and they're foreign craftsmanship and foreign manufacture. The secretary of the British embassy sold them at the flea market last week. He'd only been wearing them for 6 days, but he needed the money badly. The price was 1 ruble 50 kopecks, all right? But they may not fit, Nastasia observed. Not fit? What do you think this is? And from his pocket he hauled one of Raskolnikov's old, stiffened boots, caked all over with dried mud and full of holes. I took this monster along in reserve, and by measuring it, they were able to determine his size. The whole business was conducted in a most cordial fashion. And as for his linen, I had a word with the landlady. Here, to start with, are 3 shirts, coarse cloth ones with fashionably styled on the outside. Well, so 80 kopecks for the cap, 2 rubles 25 for the rest of the clothes. That makes 3 rubles and 5 kopecks, 1 ruble 50 for the boots, because they're very nice ones. So that comes to 4.55, and 5 rubles inclusive for the linen. They were bought wholesale, so the whole lot comes to 9 rubles and 55 kopecks exactly. There's 45 kopecks change in copper fives here. Please take them. And so, Radia, now your wardrobe is completely renewed, as in my opinion, your coat is not merely still serviceable, but actually possess an air of a certain nobility. That's what one gets when one orders one's clothes from Sharmer's. And for socks and the rest, I'll leave that up to you. We've 25 rubles left, and you don't need to worry about Pashenka and paying the rent. I told you, I got the most unlimited credit with her. And now, brother, you must please let me change your linen for you, or else your germs will probably just go on lingering in your shirt. Stop it. I don't want all this, Raskolnikov protested, warding them off, having listened with revulsion to Razumikin's strained efforts at humor in his account of how he had bought the clothes. It's no good making a fuss, brother. I haven't worn my boot leather out for nothing, Razumikin insisted. Nastayushka, don't be so embarrassed. Come and help me, that's right. And in spite of Raskolnikov's protests, he nonetheless managed to change his linen. Raskolnikov fell back on the pillows and for a couple of minutes did not say a word. They're not going to leave me alone for a long time yet, he thought. Out of whose money did you buy all this, he asked at last, looking at the wall. Whose money? What questions you do ask? Why, your own, of course. The money messenger was here this morning from back Russians. Your mother sent it, or have you forgotten? I remember now, said Raskolnikov, after a long morose bout of reflection. Frowning, Razumikin kept glancing at him uneasily. The door opened and 3 entered, a tall, thick-set man whom Raskolnikov also thought looked somewhat familiar. Zazimov, at last, Razumikin exclaimed in relief. It's the end of chapter 3, part 2.